Nobody's born incredible. People who do incredible things simply took the right steps. This is our journey. This is the hunt for incredible. All right, so on today's show, we've got my man, Chris Luna. He does ADUs. We're going to spend some time diving into that, his various strategies, what he looks for when he's acquiring ADUs. And he also has a coaching program called Backyard Billionaires, which we'll touch on along with
Margarita and Mingle.
Along with Margarita and Mingle, which is his monthly meetup in the greater San Diego area. Definitely check that out, but we'll touch on that as well. So we are in sunny San Diego hanging out with my man, Chris Luna. We've almost crossed paths so many times and had conversations on social and stuff like that, but this is the first time we've actually gotten to sit down and chat, so I'm really excited about this conversation. Chris, welcome to the show.
Good. Thanks for getting me in the house, man. I know this was last minute, but appreciate you getting me on the podcast, and I'm excited to bring value to the audience.
Hell yeah, man, for sure. All right, so why don't we kick things off with your journey in terms of how you got into real estate?
Absolutely, man. Well, let's bring it back to like when I was a little kid. I was just a young little hustler, and I'm talking lemonade stands, flipping basketball cards, selling C's candy bars, anything to make a quarter, right? And so I've always had that entrepreneur mindset instilled in me since I was a young boy. That later transcended to like high school basketball, like always like competing, being very competitive, always just wanting to win at everything I did. But yeah, where I'm going with this is went to San Diego State, and basically after 5.5 years of college, it's a lot. Most people are like 4 years. My grandpa was like, all right, time to cut you off. And so I was worried. It was either go back home to Sacramento or stay in San Diego. And I wanted to stay here. All my friends were here. I think my girlfriend at the time was here. And I needed to make money. Otherwise, I was out of here. So I thought, well, what am I good at? And there was one thing that I was already doing for people. It was fixing iPhones. So I started a company called iGeeks iPhone Repair. We opened up in Pacific Beach in a small little 400 square foot office. And I'm sitting there cranking away, fixing 10 phones a day, making $1,000, no overhead. I thought I was so rich back then. I was like, I made it. Like, I'm so fired up. And took a lot of that money, turned that into 3 stores, Mission Valley, Pacific Beach, and on campus at SDSU. And from there, I was like, well, I want a wife and kids someday, so I need like cash flow so I can stop working. I can hang out with them, right? And so I was like, I got to put this in real estate. All the rich guys, wealthy guys, they had real estate. So I started buying real estate. That's kind of just like a gist of how I got into this whole entrepreneur thing.
Yeah, nice. And then how did you end up niching down into ADUs?
ADUs? Good question. I got a buddy of mine and fraternity brother, Garrett Reuter and Matt Holt. I just saw them having a lot of success, and I kind of acted as the middleman between Garrett, who had $170,000 from his sales job, and Matt, who was already doing this. Maybe he had owned 10 deals at the time. So I linked them up, and I was like, wait, I can pair people together. I can find deals. And so I was watching them for years, maybe 2 years, managing their properties, learning how to lease to students. This is before the ADU thing was even around. This is like 2006 or 15, 14 when I started watching them. We were at like music festivals, I think Spring Awakening in Chicago. And I remember they're like, we got the deal. They're all excited. And so I was like, man, what's this deal they got? So I started looking into what they were doing. Eventually 2019 came around, started managing their properties. In between then, like 2016, I bought 2 properties on Dorothy Drive right outside of San Diego State. And we could dive into that later, but that's how I got my first deals, is by replicating what other people were already doing.
Nice. Let's dive into that. Share a little bit more.
Yeah. First deal, 6105 Dorothy. Matt was my partner on that deal. We came in with a TIC agreement, tenants in common. 3 people put in $40,000 each, $120,000 down payment, maybe, plus or minus some change, closing costs, etc. Bought a $630,000 home. We put up a few walls, remodeled it, rented it out to students for like $5,000 year 1. Year 2, we got $6,000. And so with student housing, it's rent by the bedroom. And when you're renting by the bedroom, you get anywhere from $1,000 when I was starting back in the day. Now it's like $1,500 a bedroom, like ridiculous. My one regret is that I sold all my San Diego State stuff. I'd have a lot of cash flow right now if I stayed there, but it's okay. Part of being an investor is you got to just expand and grow and learn new things. So, $6,000 payment, and a mortgage was like $2,700. We're cash flowing $1,000 each. I'm managing it. Kevin is getting the loan on the property. He's a lawyer, so he was like good active income. And Matt was the know-how. So we all came together. We got 33% each, and we were off to the races. I thought I was a genius. I was like, wow, I got to just do this over and over again. It wasn't until 2 years, 3 years later, ADUs became a thing. And, we got plans and permits, built 1,200 square feet, added another 4-bed, 2-bath in the backyard, and then rents were like exceeding $10,000, $11,000. Then we really hit the jackpot. So at that point, we sold that property for $1.6 million. We were probably in it for $800,000. We walked with $862,000. I remember that's the first time I got a big paycheck. I was like, whoa, this is crazy.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you talked a little bit about the cash flow. What happens to the value of a property when you actually add an ADU? And what do you do with the parcel? Do you just leave the parcels as multi-structures on a single parcel? Do you chop the parcel in half?
Yeah.
What's your approach there?
So the parcels remain the same. We don't do any type of lot split or anything like that, although you can do a lot split. We keep them the same, and you just find square footage. You can't encroach into the setback, so you stay within a certain area. So I like big backyards. And that first property was on a corner. So you had a house on one corner, Dorothy Drive, and then on Rockford, you had the ADU. The value of the property is determined by the NOI. And net operating income is just your income minus your expenses before taxes and insurance and your debt service. So as the NOI, the income goes up, dependent on a cap rate, that will determine the value of the property. So what was really cool about what we were doing is we were entering on comps of the neighbor, what Sally sold for next door. Sally sold for $630, so Tom is expecting to sell for $635, $640, right? So we enter on comps, add all this value, turn it into a rental to students, and then sold it to like a doctor or a chiropractor or someone who's just looking for a nice turnkey 6% return with no headaches, and in-place management was the key. And so we're exiting on cap rate, which gives you kind of like this multiplier effect. And with the multiplier effect, that's how we get the big paydays.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess a property is just worth what somebody is willing to pay for it, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So when that bank or lawyer or doctor or whatever goes to purchase that asset from you, how does the bank value it, not based on comps, but actually on its net operating income?
That was one thing we really struggled with early on. We were one of some of the first to start exiting these deals. I remember the first deal, another buddy of mine exited. He sold it for like 1.2. That was the best because on the exit, you could only get a certain loan to value, right? And so there were no comps to support it. So when the appraiser went out to get the appraisal for the buyer, he couldn't find comps. And so what we saw over time is like there was a 1.2, then a 1.4, then there was mine at 1.6. And then I did one for 1.7. And so once we start getting more comps in the area, there were appraisals to support it. And appraisers were looking at it not only on the cost approach, but they're looking at the income approach. And often what we would supply would be signed leases. In student housing by San Diego State, there's such a demand. They would be 9 months in advance leased. And so when an appraiser saw, hey, Chris, you're selling this property, you have 2 leases for $12K 9 months from now, like, okay, this checks out. Like, this makes sense. And so they could give us all that value on the income approach. So there is like you kind of got to sweet talk the appraiser a little, which I think might be illegal. But what you really got to do, is be like, hey, this is my rent. Like, you can't deny that.
Yeah. That makes sense. And then are the buyers limited to something like a DSCR loan, or can they just get a conventional loan as well? And even that is appraised against the revenue.
Every buyer has been different from what I've seen. Traditionally, like in multifamily, you are going to see a lot of, that's 5 units plus. You could see some DSCR loans. On these single family purchases where we're adding ADUs, it's only 2 units technically. Sometimes they'd only see it as 1 unit plus an ADU and not even give you credit for 2 units. And so a lot of the financing I saw was investment property, 25% down,
gotcha,
30% down. And they're more so like, it could be a little, what I remember is when they're paying 1.6, I remember the guys were putting like $400K down. So capital intensive, definitely a lot of money up front.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for anybody who doesn't know, DSCR is debt service cost ratio, which is basically you can get a loan or debt against an asset based off of the revenue that it makes, or based on the net operating income. So that basically the bank says, okay, we're going to give you this bigger loan, but we need to make sure that you can actually afford
Service
the loan.
debt,
so we need to make sure that you make enough, which is different than your typical like conventional where they just are based on comps, at least in a residential area.
Yeah. And so, yeah, for the listeners, like that's a key difference is sometimes it could be easier to get a loan on a 5-unit deal because they're looking at the asset and the income that it produces, that it could support the debt of usually a ratio of like 1.2, 1.25. Now with single family, they're looking at, okay, what's Chris's credit score? Oh no, this kid's got a 400. He ain't, nope, can't do that. I don't actually, but you know what I'm saying? They're looking at my income. And so as a real estate investor, maybe you write everything off. So you don't have like earned income you can even show. So boom, another strike on that. So there's a lot of things when you're going after these single family deals. That's why I love partnering with lawyers, director of operations at a hotel, someone who's just got that steady paycheck. I'm like, if I see that, I'm like, let's partner.
Yeah, let's touch on that a little bit more because I've had conversations with people as well who ask why I ended up pulling out of residential and going straight into commercial. And a big reason is like more units under a single roof or more units on a single lot is easier to acquire in many ways. Of course, it's not always a cakewalk, but it is easier when you can actually say, hey, look, this is a cash producing asset, so I want to take a loan out against this asset as opposed to my income.
Yeah, that's true. Grant Cardone was a mentor of mine, and he's always talking about that. Like the number of doors, I was in his group mentorship for a year. The number of doors is the most important thing in real estate because, one person moves out of a 100 unit, you still have a 99% occupancy. Now, one person moves out of my, let's call it a 4 unit, then you're down 25%. And so that really affects your numbers.
Yeah. No, there are a lot of variables that impact the risk profile, but that is a big one for banks is like, okay, how much, like what is the, I guess like the revenue share per door on this asset and how high of risk is it if somebody leaves, if a single tenant leaves?
Yeah. Most banks, like, when I learned this from Grant too, like when they're underwriting, like say your occupancy is at 80%, well then they're just going to give you credit for 80%. That's cool. What if your occupancy is at 100%? And say it is at 100%, the bank won't even give you credit for 100%. They drop it to 95%. That's what they can actually give you credit for on the income. And so even if you're at 100%, the bank, that's how they like kind of stress test their deals. They drop you to a 95 off the back. So it's either like 95 or 70 if you happen to be at lower occupancy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So share a little bit more about what you're looking for when you are looking for an asset to add an ADU to.
Yeah, that's funny. I just did a post about this on my broadcast channel on Instagram. And when I have a single family home slammed to the front setback, and what a setback is, just for the audience, I know you probably know what that is. It's, usually there's a driveway, and on the driveway you need 15, 16, 17 feet, okay? And so you can't build into that space. It's set back, like you can't build into it. It's like where the lawn is, for instance, and then you have the house behind it. So I like when my single-family home is slammed all the way to the front, and then I love when a duplex is like in the far back left or far back right of the property. Now what this allows me to do is I find this little center area, okay, and then I go and add multiple ADUs. I'm not talking one, I'm talking like, in my latest deal, we can dive into 6 on this PB deal.
Oh, nice.
It's pretty sick. And then you got parking like on the side, so like you solve that issue. So that is like the best way like to make money because you don't have to tear down the existing units. And if they're producing income already, which on that deal it was like $9,500 or $10,000 already day one. Now I don't have to deal with any type of like tenant protections or anything like that. Like they're paying rent, they're set. Next year I can bump them 10% if I choose to. Or they just stay there. And then in the meantime, I go and build my ADUs.
So what are the rules on ADUs then? Is it just you can, however many you can fit on this?
Bro, it's
or is
insane.
Yeah, so what are the rules around that?
Okay, so it all comes down to the floor area ratio. And what that means is on a single family home, you're going to want, I'm giving all the tips and tricks. On a single family home, you just want a big lot, 10 to 15,000 an acre, whatever. That's great. There's a chart that the city has. And so if it's 10,000 square foot lot, then it's going to be like 0.49 FAR. That's floor area ratio. And so what that means is you take basically half of 10,000, which is 5,000. And if the existing house has 1,000 square feet on it, you go 5,000 is the maximum buildable minus the 1,000 puts you at 4,000 is what you can add of ADUs. If we do 10 400 square foot studios, we can add 10 units plus the existing 1,000. So we get an 11 unit building on a big lot. That's why the big lot's on single family where it's at. So that's option number one. It's just like, poof. When I learned that, I was off to the races. I started buying big lots.
And you do all studios? All your builds are studios?
Like by San Diego State, I have a 12,000 square foot lot. It's going to be 25 beds across the street from San Diego State on Montezuma Road. Those are like, that's beds. But sometimes I do studios or one beds. One beds are good.
Cool.
I'll tell people why later on, why the one beds are better than two beds. So that's option A, great option. Option B is, again, back to the floor area ratio. On a multifamily zone property, RM37, RM38, RM39, usually 6,000 to 7,000 square foot lots, the floor area ratio on those are like 1.8, 2.25, and 2.7. So let's just take a smaller, like I got a deal I'm closing on Grand Avenue, different Grand Avenue, 6,300 square foot lot. It's RM25, which I think is like 1.30. So it allows me to build like 9,000 square feet. It's insane. 20 units.
That's amazing. Are there any like height requirements or?
Yeah. In PB, there's the coastal commission, so you're capped at 30, and that's why I'm bullish on PB. If you go around North Park, parking's a mess right now. Development, I'm not hating. It's just the truth. They're building like 70 feet high, no parking. So when you have that much development in one little area, it will actually bring rent prices down, right? Supply and demand. And so we're already seeing that where people are building these units and they thought they can rent them for $2,600, but they're capping out at like $2,200 because they don't have parking. Now you take this same idea, but you go to the beach, developers like me can only go 3 stories. And so that's a slower growth. And then what else with PB is assets don't trade as much. They're legacy assets that the old guys just keep and they pass them down to their kids and then they trade. And so you have less stuff trading, so less development with coastal commissions capping the height. So I'm so bullish on PB.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I hope that the listeners are really teasing out the gold here, because we've touched on a handful of things already. But what you're doing where you're buying an asset that's appraised as a residential asset and you're adding value that effectively converts its value to a commercial asset, and you're doing it in a market that is limiting the growth rate for that supply. I mean, yeah, that spread there, that jump is so quick, and it seems like the barrier of entry is not absolutely insane as long as like you pick the right spots.
Yeah, I'm such a sucker for like great locations. Like I would never buy like probably south of the 94. I'm just not quite there yet. I'll buy anywhere around the park though. Golden Hill, Hillcrest, South Park, North Park, Normal Heights even is pretty good. I have a property out there. San Diego State for the student housing play if it's across the street from campus, and then anywhere in PB that's basically west of Ingram. Like I want to be in like by Garnett and Grand. That's where most of my stuff is, because I understand those students, what do they want to do? They want to do what I did when I was 25. We all know what they're trying to do. They're trying to party and then stumble home. That's kind of could be often the tenant demographic we see. I'll lease it to anyone who is willing to pay what market rent is, but yeah.
So what would you say is somebody's first step? If they say, oh, wow, this really resonates with me, it seems attainable, I'm going to go for it. Join your program, right? Coaching program.
Yeah, they
seems
could.
like a pretty surefire, at least one of the options to dive in.
Yeah.
What would you say are some first initial steps in terms of their career to secure their first deal?
That's a great question. I always talk about at my program, Backyard Billionaire, shout out backyardbillionaire.com. It goes deal, debt, equity. And so if you can find any one of those 3 things, you are valuable. You're valuable as a person no matter what, but you bring even more value if you can bring a deal, debt, or equity, because that's all you need to get stuff done. And so if you want a deal, there's a few things you could do. You could do what I did, which was get my real estate license. What it allows you to do is operate with speed and certainty, because if you know all the comps and you see everything hit because you have Redfin on and your zip codes are on and you know your market very well, you see everything that trades, you know what the cost per square foot is, you just know all the details. You know what agent sold it, you know how long it was on the MLS for, how many days until it went pending. You just become data all in your head, so you can move fast. When you can move fast, you can write offers fast and get deals tied up before all the investors start circling around for it. So getting your license has been huge for me. Almost everybody in my program happens to have their license. And if you don't have your license, that's cool. Just get in with someone who is studying a market that you want to be in. So that's for the deal side. You could do that, and then also, wholesaling lists, the kind of sees kind of whatever deals. I like stuff on market. The best stuff, the guys know they have the good stuff, and it trades on market. Unless you want the scraps or you own a big company like GG Homes, for instance, where you're flipping across the city and you have systems and processes, then yeah, if you're running a big company like that, sure, like you can go direct to seller and spend money on marketing and go that route. That's not for me though. So that's on the deal. Okay, next with the debt. With the debt, say you are a lawyer or chiropractor or whatever, you have like steady W-2 income, well then you're in a very good position to partner with someone like me because you could get the loan for us. Let's say we buy a single family home. I can't get the loan because I can only get 10 Fannie and Freddie government-backed loans. Well, in that case, go get the loan for us. Maybe come in with half of the down payment. I'll come in with the other half. I'll do the work. We'll split it 50-50. So that's a good place to start, being able to get a loan. So I would say go get a pre-approval from a lender. Doesn't have to be a crazy bank. Could be a local bank, Chase, Wells. That's on that side. The last part is the equity. If you have a mom or dad with a 401k and they have money sitting there and they know that you've got the knowledge and you know Chris Luna and Chris Luna does deals and this is his portfolio and you're good friends with him, and maybe they want to pull that money out of a 401k, or I've had parents pull, not my parents, other parents do HELOCs, home equity line of credits that we'd go use as down payments. We'd pay them a little interest rate. They make the spread. They borrow at 4 or 5, and then we'd pay them 7. They make the difference. That's an option. Or if you have a social media following or the ability to raise capital, that's very important. That's often my bottleneck on why I can't do more deals. So deal, debt, equity, that's kind of high level. I know it's basic, but if you think about it, that's what you need to get deals done, and that's what we teach.
What do the lending products look like for somebody who, let's say they put Fannie Mae 5% interest down or 5% down at a good interest rate on a property that they plan to build an ADU on? Mm-hmm. Would they, what does the financing look like for adding that ADU if they got like a primary resident loan on it?
Not that good. I just got note that Kiavi is offering some new construction financing. I need to go take a look at that. Kiavi's they help a lot of flippers out. I think as ADUs become more mainstream across America, there's going to be better options. I do know right now that the debt to build the ADU is often like a bottleneck for like the mom and pop shops. And we call it Backyard Billionaire because it's not about anyone being a billionaire. It's about there's billions available to be developed in people's backyards across America, because as ADUs become more common in cities like Austin, Cincinnati, Florida, all throughout California, there's literally billions to be made. And so often a family of 2, maybe their kids went off to college and they're the parents are kind of bored. They work but they want like a rental or something. Maybe they want an Airbnb. But often they say well, how do I finance this? What I tell people you could do is a home equity line of credit to finance it and then refinance. The tricky part is when you refinance, you might be going from your nice cushy 3% rate to today's rates, 6 or 7. That's no fun. So that's not that smart. Often the best way to fund it I've seen is just cash, but a lot of people don't have that cash to fund it. So there aren't great options in my opinion on how to fund it. I'll tell you how I've funded it. It was always, I got such a good deal on the property, $630,000, right? That I'd go get a second trust deed from one of the partners, Kevin's dad, on that first deal. He lent us the $200K to build it, and then we paid out of pocket the $25,000 for the plans and permits. And then when we cashed out refinance, because we don't ever want to sell anything, you just kind of sometimes have to. When we decided to cash out refinance, we pulled out a bigger loan on the new appraised value, paid back Kevin's dad, paid back the first loan, got a little bit of money in our bank account, and then we keep the asset. And then we sold it a little later on, a year later.
That's awesome.
So yeah, there aren't great options. What I would say though is Kiavi is now doing development loans. I think someone just sent it to me this week, construction loans. So that could be a good resource because they're across the nation, and I feel like they're going to start lending more on construction on stuff like this.
So regarding your Backyard Billionaire coaching program, what do you see as the biggest differentiator between your students that succeed and your students that struggle?
That's a great question. There's one student of mine and who just closed a deal. We closed 2 deals, 3 deals together. Okay, why is he succeeding? Well, let me think. He shows up every Tuesday, and he's not just like on the Zoom call hanging out. This dude's listening. He's being very intentional. He's asking good questions. If someone messes up on the underwriting, he's calling it out. He's like, TJ, you forgot a zero there, or you forgot this. So he's actively trying to be successful. There's that. He also had some cash. Okay, and so he believed in himself enough to pay it's like $3,500 or whatever it was when he signed up. And so he believed in himself enough. He made the investment, and he's been very successful. And he's not scared to go after deals. I would say he really trusts me because we're on these calls weekly, and he sees the success I have. And so he's been a success. Now, on the other hand, I've had students, even one-on-one students who they say that they understood what we were talking about after sitting on 45-minute calls, 12 times, but they weren't really processing or putting it in action. Like they knew what zoning to look for, they sent me deals, but they didn't really understand the debt. They don't understand that we need to put 30% down. They thought we could just get in with maybe 15%, right? Everyone's trying to get in with 5 or 10%. They didn't understand that development, sometimes the way we do it, could be capital intensive on the entrance, meaning 30% down. But the way we do it is, we could get 30% down, and then we have 100% construction financing, so we don't have to pay for the construction loans, which is unheard of. So that's the key differentiator. It's just like the desire to like actually learn what's going on and not just say like agree and nod with me, right? They understand we got to come in with 30%. So it's really just coming down to like the basics of understanding like the mechanics of a deal. Yeah.
And putting it into action. I love that aspect of it because there's the intellectual knowledge and then there's the experiential knowledge. Yeah. And there's a massive difference between those two. And it's the people who apply themselves to translate the intellectual knowledge into the experiential knowledge that actually make progress and move the needle and get to where they're trying to go.
Exactly. 100%. All you got to do is have one deal go right and then just repeat successful actions and keep doing the same thing. But you have one deal go wrong or it doesn't go well, you'll be out of the game. You're like, real estate ain't for me.
Yeah. So tell me more about what was the 100% construction financing or loan that you were talking about.
Yeah, that's it's kind of a good hookup we have. What we've learned through him is he likes us as operators, a few of us that he works with, because he looks at the numbers. He's like, dang, he's adding 6 ADUs. This thing's going up $3 million in value. This is a no-brainer.
So it's like private money, private construction money.
Yeah, it's a bank that is now kind of toying around in this space of ADUs because it's very unique what we can do. What we can do here is different than what we can do in Sacramento, where I'm from. You could only build X amount of ADUs there, right? San Diego's very pro-development because we need to build 9,000 units, I think, in the next 10 years. So it's 1,000 units a year. So they are making it easier and easier for us. Now the bottleneck is plans and permits are slow AF. And so we just got to figure that out.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a way to expedite those or plan ahead? How often do people acquire an asset and then realize that they're in trouble, or maybe they position themselves to where that timeline doesn't work for them?
Yeah. When I got in the game 2018, 19, when we started building some of our first ADUs around San Diego State, dude, plans were done in 3.5 months. It was fast. That was legit. Because then 3.5 months plans, start digging. By the time you get stamped plans, you already basically were ready to pour foundation, off to the races, build it in 3.5. Project's all done, 7-8 months. Tricky thing with student housing is you need to hit this June 1, July 1, or August 1 timeline when school's starting. And if you miss that, your students will have nowhere to live, and it's bad news bears. Parents aren't happy about that. You got to put them in hotels. So very tight timelines on the student housing game. So 3.5 is what we saw, and that was great. It's gotten slower as, that was 5 years ago. Now, for what we do, if it's multifamily development, basically a big rectangular box you would see anywhere in San Diego on a 7,000 square foot lot, the plans take a year. So it's pretty slow. If Coastal Commission gets involved, it could be up to 18 months. So development, you got to have thick skin and think long term. And the way I see it is either way, time's going to go by. I'm 35 now, and I know at some point I'll be 36 and 37. So I'm willing to wait. Now, where a lot of flippers and wholesalers, they want the money now, right? And I was like that too when I was 26, 27, 28. I want the money now so I can live my life and start making investments. So there's different real estate investment strategies. But if you want to build 180U, that's probably the best for a beginner because you can get the plans a lot faster. Call it 4, 5, 6 months. That's not bad. And most people, parents or anyone building a property in their backyard, that's probably where they're going to start. They're not going to go and build a multifamily development. That's kind of like the advanced stage that I've ended up in. But I've learned the basics first. It's like, learning to walk before you run. And so once you have the basic building blocks, my buddy Keith Henderson, he's building like massive projects at San Diego State. Like he's probably the biggest investor there. And he told me once, before I was even in development, he was like, yeah, building 180U is the same process as building my 50 unit building that he's building. It's the same city, planning. There's just more hoops to jump through, more lawyers involved, like on different like CEQA and environmental and different impact reports, but more or less it's the same process. So you just got to be willing to wait through it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, Chris, we always wrap up with this question. What do you think of when you hear the word incredible?
Okay. When I hear the word incredible, I just think of someone who's remarkable in their field. And so someone who's just an expert is just exceeding and pushing the envelope and trying to be their best self. And whatever area that is. I know we talked a lot about real estate, but I mean, that could be like being a good like being an incredible dad, to be an incredible husband, being an incredible son, whatever. I think it's just like pushing the envelope, being the best possible version of yourself you can be. That's what I think about.
I love that. Where can people find you?
ChrisJ.Luna on Instagram. I'm all over YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Threads, websites lunacapital.us or backyardbillionaire.com. Very active on social media on Instagram. That's usually where I'll respond directly to people.
Awesome. And then what's the pitch for Backyard Billionaire? What's the specific offerings that people know what to look for?
We have a course. The course is cool, like if you just want to get info, but like the group mentorship is where it goes down. The course, $2,000, and it's just like, have at it. Good luck. You'll learn a lot, be really good for you. You can go and get this knowledge anywhere, is the truth. And so like if you don't have $2,000, don't spend it. Like go on YouTube and piece it all together. But if you want someone who's done it and pieced it together for you, then pay for the course. I think our best offer is the group mentorship. It comes with the course, so you could do the course. Being on those calls every week, seeing real deals I'm doing, seeing me go through my architectural plans, geotechnical reviews, topographic studies, surveys, learning how, like I'll call an agent on the call and we'll tie a deal up. One time Josh got an accepted offer on the Zoom call. It was so epic. We have it recorded. That's my testimony. Awesome. And so like just being on those calls is very beneficial. You get to bring your questions. Tuesdays at 8 a.m., we go over just kind of overall deals we're doing and just kind of opening up the room, wins, losses. It's almost like an office hours. Wednesday, 9 a.m. call, we do a underwriting call where we use our model, our spreadsheet, to see how much equity is created, how much cash flow is this thing going to make, is this a flip or shovel-ready strategy? And so I really enjoy those calls. It's really nice to pour into others, as you were doing on this podcast. So you understand, like, it is very fulfilling to pour into people.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, I'm glad we finally got the chance to sit down.
Yeah.
I'm sure this won't be the last time we do it. So thank you so much for being on the pod.
Absolutely. Thank you for getting me in today. This is a blast. I set the intention to get on more podcasts, and that's what's cool. If you put something out into the world, like people talk, things happen, and the universe moves, and boom, now we're here.
100%.
Love it, man.
Good stuff.